Retro Achievements has been talking about standalone support for more and more games as time goes on. If you don't know, just a quick update for people that don't follow along with Retro Achievements or don't even know what it is. Basically, it's a place where you can go and play really old games, get achievements for them, see a score go up, feel better about yourself. Usually, the last one is very optional, but hey, it feels good. Popping the achievement, just like the 360 days, feels inherently special. And for standalone games, well, what's the difference between, the SNES or even going back, or not back, but going forward into the GameCube? What's different? Well, standalone is much more of setup for more recent titles. The idea of retro is now older than 10 years, which I feel is a little too soon. But for example, the first two standalone uh, achievement sets was Final Fantasy XI, which I feel is actually pretty on point, and Terraria, which was odd, but at the same time, a really popular choice. Terraria is one of the best games of I almost said the past decade, but it's almost 14. Is it 15 years old? I don't know. I just a deep cut. I remember getting maybe a code or something of Terraria back in the day and playing like a beta that was available, or maybe it was early access. If you going deep cut real quick, Paper Vat VG. If you guys, any of you out there remember that, I think it was in part with that, or I remember watching a video and getting a code because of it. But ignoring that, those are the two standalones that say on Retro Achievements as of right now. Now, there's a lot more games that I would love to see, and that's what this video is about. But ultimately, is very important that one, this is requested properly, and two, at the same time, while I would love to see these games, I personally would only try really hard to get one of them, and I'll talk about it as I go along. But we're going to start from bottom to top, not in bottom of what I really want to see, but bottom as I think can work as an achievement set. And the first one we're going to talk about is FTL. FTL, Faster Than Light. If you are uninitiated, if you've been born, you're too young to understand, it's one of the hardest roguelikes, or just roguelike in general. It's one of the hardest of that genre in a very long time. It came out during a time where roguelikes were starting to pop off in a very drastic way, not as it is now where it's kind of become a normal genre, but roguelikes were not very settled. You had Binding of Isaac, which we'll actually talk about a little bit later, and you had a few others that were around. But for the most part, FTL is one of the grandfathers of this genre. Not to say that the roguelike really started during this time. It's more along the lines that it got very popular. And when people look at roguelikes in the genres nowadays, FTL, Binding of Isaac, and a few others around that time are the concrete. They're the ones that people look at and go, that's the predecessor, that's the beginning of it. Even though it's not true, there's been roguelikes since the 90s, or there's a couple in the 80s as well. But ignoring that, for the modern age roguelike, FTL is very important. And it's a very hard game, which I ultimately think fills into a lot of potential achievements to a certain point. One of the problems with retro achievements is I feel like there's a couple sets on the site that have impossible achievements. Not impossible as in you literally can't do them, as impossible as the requirements are so high that it takes a very specific person and not people to unlock. And FTL would probably have a bunch of those. FTL is incredibly difficult, and it's not one of those things of like, oh, you learn the game. You're also talking about a bunch of luck. You're talking about a bunch of hours learning, and while my name is many hours in a lot of the usernames, I don't want to spend 1,000 hours on an achievement set. Not for FTL. While I do love the game, and I think it's hands down one of the best experiences you could go back to and play even now, it's hard. It's very hard, and I feel like having that hard of an achievement set is not really gonna be great. I do feel if you do a main line set and then maybe a couple subsets would be best, but I don't know how the standalone, like for difficulty is really going. Right now we have like completionist and a bunch of other stuff for Terraria, but I don't know how the subset like basically guidelines will end up setting up for standalone. It's still very new to the site, so that's one that I think is I would love to see, but at the same time, there has to be caveats on just the achievements themselves, which I feel might be more designer issues than anything else. The next one we're going to talk about, this is also technically two, but Payday and Payday 2. The reason I say both is because they both encapsulate kind of the same issues I think you would run into. One, they're multiplayer focused, which I feel like can always run into problems. And two, Payday 1 and Payday 2 have this huge issue of just not working. I don't know if a lot of Payday fans exist out there for like the newer stuff in Payday 3. But it used to be a lot worse, and Payday 1 used to be one of the more broken games you would load up and play with your friends. Payday 2 fixed a lot of that, but there's still some issues of just stealth not working, and whether you were doing challenges or achievements around that stuff, I don't really know how you would end up making a fun experience besides just making a very basic guideline to achievements. And at that point, that kind of breaks the rules of what could be a standalone. You want a very unique achievement set that isn't just found in the Steam achievements. So I don't really know what you could do, and that's why I put it higher than FTL, but it's also almost on the same level of just I don't really know what you could do with it, because while Payday 1 I could make an achievement list and I think it would be unique, there's a lot of Easter eggs in it. Payday 2 has this issue of all the challenge achievements have already kind of been posted, whether on Xbox or Steam, and even newer stuff doesn't necessarily work. Like fully stealthy a certain mission, you have to do a very specific maneuver. It will go to the bank, right? If you fully tried to stealth the very beginning part of the bank, there's a possibility the camera just sees you on the easier difficulties because it just sees through walls sometimes. And that's not a fault of the player, that's the fault of the game. And at that point, the achievement set is a little buggy because of the game. Which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of achievement sets that have that issue because the game is so bad. Not bad, but buggy in that regard. But I feel like adding more to a standalone like that is probably why we won't see it. I would love to see Payday 1 at least. And I mentioned Payday 2 because I feel like if of all of them that would get picked up, it would be Payday 2, which is sad, but I prefer Payday 1. But hey, I would see either of them and be happy. The third one we're going to talk about is the Binding of Isaac Flash. We're talking about the original Binding of Isaac. I understand a lot of people would be like, why not Repentance? Ultimately, I think Repentance into like Afterbirth and all that would require a insane amount of subsets to kind of separate it, because when we're talking standalone, I think you have to kind of exclude DLC from the equation. That's also why Payday 2 is low, because it does have DLC, and I don't know how you would want to do that. But with the talk of the Binding of Isaac, the original Binding of Isaac, you only need Wrath of the Lamb, and even then, you could technically argue that you only need the Halloween update, which was free for the game, and you could form a set around it, and then a Wrath of the Lamb like subset. So ultimately, it's not that bad of like a set up for the sets. That was a weird sentence, but and it's why I would probably pick the original Binding of Isaac, because while the newer one is easier to kind of get a hold of, not get a hold of, but kind of get your ability to play around. It runs way better. It plays way better. But the original is probably easier to kind of finagle for an achievement set. And at the same time, you could do some really unique stuff in that game. You could crash the game, which I don't know how you would make an achievement for that, but that would be funny. And there's a lot of builds that you can go into it to make a unique achievement set. I do think it's kind of limiting though, because Binding of Isaac already has achievements for like collecting everything, so I don't know. There's a very fun idea of like doing insane subsets for this, which I've thought about doing like playthroughs before, but I the achievements are still very hard to form in my brain. Like it's still very complicated with that many items, and there's what 10 times more in repentance. Uh, yeah, it's overall insane the amount of items that were added. And while there's a bunch of challenges and stuff that you could put for Binding of Isaac Flash, I do think it's definitely like middle of the road possibility. I think more people would probably argue for the more recent one because they didn't play the original. But the original is something special, and I do think it fits more because it is retro. I'm trying to argue more retro standalones here than newer stuff, which I think the is Repentance or Repentance and Afterbirth are like 2016 and after, right? I think I'm pretty sure, which I feel is too new. That's less than 10 years. Maybe in a couple years, but right now I feel like the original would be a better fit. Which goes into two games I really want to see, and I can already see the layout for this game. If you're a huge tower defense fan and you played a lot of maybe 360 and you saw this, or you were a PC gamer at the time like me, you play these to hell and back, and that's Orcs Must Die 1 and 2. Now, Orcs Must Die 1, I feel like is a shoe in. I put it below this other game because I am such a fan of the next one. But Orcs Must Die 1, I feel you can encapsulate so many things into an achievement set. Only use bladed things on this. No archers, no anything. And there's so many ways of doing like nightmare mode, standard mode, and we're not talking about the beginning because nobody actually does the basic mode. Is it like called like Apprentice, I think? But like you have the like normal mode and then nightmare mode. And I feel like there's so many achievements you could build Orcs Must Die 1 around, and it kind of continues on with 2 because they're static levels. And while there is a co-op for 2, I feel like it's not inherently cheatable. Not saying as in like Payday is cheatable, but there's a lot more factors that can go into like co-op being abused or like knowing how to abuse the AI. Versus Orcs Must Die 2, you're abusing the AI anyway as one player, and you're trying to figure out. With 2, it actually sometimes becomes harder for some of the levels. Especially flashback levels. There's a couple of the older ones that appear in 2. Um, and I think it's DLC though, which is a little iffy. But overall, I do feel there's actually some challenges you can do for Orcs Must Die 1 and 2 that fit for an achievement set. There's so many different ways you could do it. One of them would be cool is like elemental only traps. Only having like archers and guardians, call it like building an army or something. There's so many different achievements that I feel works for Orcs Must Die 1 and it's kind of pseudo 2 that I happen to think it's a really good like idea. Uh, and that would probably be one I would probably look into actually building myself. I don't know a lot about how to get it. I would have to ask the people that ended up doing like the Terraria like workshop, or just build a mod myself that is separate. But there's also a lot more going into that, and I would need to learn about half of it because I don't know it. I've built mods for other games, but I don't know one about any of the Works Must Die stuff that I need to look into, and also at the same time I don't know anything about connecting to retro achievements. It's probably not that complicated, but or maybe it is complicated. It's just repetitive. I don't know, but it's one of those things that I would probably want to look into, which also goes into the next game. And the next game is not really an achievement set that I think will ever happen. It's just the one that I have the most amount of achievements already in my mind for, and I love this game to death. That's the first Killing Floor. Now, I didn't put the second one here because I think it's too new, which is a wild statement to say because it's been out for almost a decade now, or maybe a little bit more. But the first Killing Floor is a special game in my heart. I probably have put like 700 plus hours into this game, and that's probably a light number. It's probably closer to 1,000. I have two Steam accounts that have like 300 plus, and that isn't even bringing in like the third old Steam account that I originally played Killing Floor in. That Steam account had level 5s back when that was the highest you can go. That's just an example of how long I played Killing Floor for, and I played way too much of it. Also, at the same time, there is a lot of achievement possibilities in Killing Floor. You have one, you can have a pure multiplayer subset if you really want. You can have another one where it's just solo and you're doing the kind of the interesting achievements. My favorite would probably be able to kill a Scrake on Hell on Earth without taking any damage by yourself, and I feel like that would be like a very fun one. If you know exactly what you do. It's not a very secretive thing, and maybe it would be one point. Love the backfiring car in the background, but at the same time, there's a bunch more stuff. There's just getting the different level ups to, or the different perks to be leveled up. I feel like there would be a lot of fun multiplayer achievements only that you could do, which I mean you could put in a subset, and it would be like run Hell on Earth with 6 commandos. Like just bullet spray would be hilarious. There's also different Hell on Earth for different maps and restricting them to certain perks because there's certain like maps that I think are maliciously bad for Hell on Earth. Hell on Earth is a really hard difficulty to especially play on a team of 6. On solo, there's certain maps I think it's not impossible, but it becomes a lot harder because of the way the spawns are. Biox Lab is a great example. I think it's one of the best maps to learn on hard and suicidal with a team, and even on solo it's entirely possible. But I think Hell on Earth, the biggest problem is there's certain spawns that just screw you over and you don't do enough damage to, for example, crawlers, and so you kind of get screwed over on spawns no matter which way you go about it. There's ways of living and you have to learn it, but it's also this is how you know I like this game. I just realized I got off tangent, but I feel like the achievement set for Killing Floor would be inherently very fun and also a great game similar to kind of Final Fantasy 11, where you can kind of group up with people on retro achievements and play through entire rounds. It's also a first-person shooter, which is actually kind of lacking on the site. There is a lot because PS2 and GameCube are there, but I feel like first person shooters are relatively rarer on the site. Also, the kind of wave survival like aspect of it is not prevalent on retro achievements. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna put in the background for the video of this or the video portion. Probably, hopefully one of these games if I have enough time. Please future me. But yeah, that's my kind of 5-ish standalones: FTL, Payday 1, Binding of Isaac Flash, Orcs Must Die 1, and Killing Floor that I would love to see as standalones. And I really am going to look into making Killing Floor standalone because it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I would love to see it. So, yeah, if you are on Retro Achievements and you've seen all the news about standalones, what is one game, an older PC game, or even just like is similar to Final Fantasy 11, like an MMO, that you would love to see as a standalone, that you would love to see a set, whether it's the rarest game in the world, but then again, remember, you're more than likely not going to get it, or if it's very popular, which one would you love to see? And if you don't know what Retro Achievements is, what's a game that you would love to see achievements for that doesn't have it in general, and see if maybe Retro Achievements has it for you, and if it doesn't, maybe request it. You never know at this point. But yeah, that's it for right now. Hopefully the video is actually Orcs Must Die or Killing Floor in the background. Please, please future me.